This is the Louie Tee Network.
In the lab room.
The views and opinions shared on this program are that of Louie Tee and In the Lab Room alone and should be taken exactly as they are given. If you are soft, easily offended, or can't listen to the criticism of your team, this program is not intended for you. This is pure, unadulterated football talk for the hardcore fan. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome, you are in the lab room. I am your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on this program, 2014 NFL Lab Report. Today we're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. We're taking that trip out to the jungle that I talked about. You ready? Let's rock and roll. 2014 NFL Lab Report of the Cincinnati Bengals. Strengths for this Cincinnati Bengals football team. When you're trying to be the best team in a division that has the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens in it, there's so many different things you have to do well and have to do well for the entire season. And this Cincinnati Bengals football team did exactly that. So what did it take for this team to win the division last year? For the first time since 2009? There were a number of things they did well. Let's start with time of possession. Here's a team that possessed the football last year for well over 32 minutes per game. That was good enough for second in the league. And it's great to dominate the football. You control the pace of the game. That means your defense is getting off the field, and that means your offense is holding on to the football. Cincinnati ran the football a lot last year. Didn't say they ran it very well. They just ran it a lot last year. So they ate up the clock and were able to sustain drives and get into the end zone, cap them off with touchdowns. And so that made this team that much more effective in their quest to win the AFC North division a season ago. You look at another strength of this football team. It's the passing game explosiveness. And this is the one of all of their strengths. This is the one that I like the most. We talk about it all the time. I mention it all the time. Points in the National Football League come through the passing game. And there weren't many teams in the league that did it better in the league explosively through the air than the Cincinnati Bengals. 33 passing touchdowns last season. That was good for third best in the league, again, behind Peyton Manning and New Orleans. And a lot of people don't realize that Andy Dalton was flinging the football all around the field and getting it done last season. 33 touchdown passes. They didn't surrender that many sacks. He's one of those quarterbacks that does not get sacked that often. The offensive line does a wonderful job of protecting him. So do the backs that are in the game on third downs. They do a great job of picking up blitzes and keeping him clean so that he can scan the field and find open targets to throw the football to. And here's the big kicker. 15 plays of 40 yards or more through the air. That was good enough for second in the league behind the Philadelphia Eagles in their 18. So this team found a way to strike gold big in the passing game through the air. And when you've got a guy like it's AJ Green on the edges looking to run routes deep down the field, and you've got a guy like Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, finding him deep time after time, there's going to be a connection made, and they did it among the best in the league last season. And like I say, points come through the passing game. And when you can get explosive plays like that, you've got a big chance to make things happen in this league. You go to another strength of this Cincinnati Bengals football team, and it's defensive penalties. They didn't beat themselves. And again, I love it when teams are disciplined enough to not beat themselves, to not help the opponent. And the Cincinnati Bengals defensively did not help the other team out with foolish penalties. Lowest amount of penalties surrendered by this Cincinnati Bengals football team, and the fourth lowest penalty yardage stemming from those penalties. So they got it done. They didn't give the other teams opportunities to pick up fresh set of downs with penalties and mistakes. Weren't a lot of pass interferences down the field. They made sure that if you were going to beat them on any given Sunday or Monday or Thursday for that matter, you were going to have to do it on your own. They weren't going to assist you on the defensive side of the football with mistakes. That's the mark of a good team. You look at another strength of this Cincinnati Bengals team, and again, I told you they did a lot right, and they had to come out on top in a division, again, that has the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. You look at pass defense, and here's a team that ranked among the best in a lot of defensive categories when talking about defending the pass. They had 20 interceptions on the year, which was good for fifth in the league. They got after the quarterback, generated a nice amount of pressure. They were one of these teams that kept the passer rating relatively low. They had 59% completion percentage, so that's under 60. So they're making sure that teams aren't getting into a groove and completing a lot of passes, which kind of goes hand in hand with that time of possession. If you can keep teams from completing a high percentage of passes, you're going to get off the field on third down. You're going to be able to get the football back to your offense, and you're going to stop that team from getting into an offensive rhythm. And I talked about them not having defensive penalties. So if you're stopping them from throwing the football, if you're stopping teams from running the football, we'll talk about that in a second, you're going to find ways to get off the field, whether it be via turnover or it's via you just getting off the field on third downs. And this Cincinnati Bengals defense, especially through the air, was magnificent a season ago at getting the job done by hook or by crook. This Cincinnati Bengals defense got it done and gave their offense numerous chances to get in the end zone a season ago. You look at the rush defense from the standpoint of keeping teams out of the end zone. Cincinnati Bengals surrendered the third fewest rushing touchdowns with only 6 given up on the season. Again, you got to find a way to keep teams out of the end zone, whether it's through the air, whether it's on the ground. You've got to figure out ways to keep teams out of the end zone. And this Cincinnati Bengals team only gave up 19 points a game. So again, once you keep teams under 20, you're going to win a lot of games. I've said this a couple of times talking about some of these teams. As we get up here with these division winners, what you'll find is that a lot of these teams gave up less than 20 points a game. And if you give up less than 20 points a game, you're probably going to win double-digit games in this league, because most teams in this league score up over 20 points per game on the offensive side of things. So if you're giving up less than 20, you're going to find yourself winning a lot of ball games. Cincinnati gave up less than 20 points last season, and a lot of it was due to the fact that teams could not find the end zone. Only 6 rushing touchdowns. I already told you they only surrendered 22 passing touchdowns, so they were keeping teams out of the end zone, and that's going to give you an excellent shot at winning football games in this league. Cincinnati did a lot of things well last year, and that's the reason why they were able to win the AFC North in 2013. You move on from all of those strengths that helped this team be the best in their division to some of the weaknesses that stopped them from getting as far as they could have potentially went in 2013. For all of the good that the Cincinnati Bengals did with the penalties on the defensive side of the football, offensively, they were the direct opposite. They had 102 penalties last year on the offensive side of football. That's way too much for an offense that is as good as this Cincinnati Bengals team was a season ago and is going to continue to be. They're a young, very talented football team on both sides of the football, and so you would expect them to make some mistakes, but not 102 penalties. That's too many penalties for a team that's looking to be as good as they are. That's something they've got to correct fifth most penalty yardage stemming from those 102 penalties, up over 1,000 yards in penalty yardage. Again, you can't make those type of mistakes as a football team if you expect to be among the best. Some teams can overcome those penalties, and as you can see, the Cincinnati Bengals were able to do so a year ago, but you do not want to put yourself in that type of position where you're picking up chunks of yardage only to have it called back because of a penalty, or you're picking up some yardage and some good gains on first and second down only to see you go backwards and have to go back and pick up more yards to overcome a set of obstacles that you've put in front of yourself. And that's the biggest problem, is beating yourself, making it harder on yourself. That's what penalties do in this league. Cincinnati Bengals need to clean that up on the offensive side of the football. Got to reduce those penalties and become a much more efficient offense. You look at another weakness for this team, and they didn't do a lot of things that poorly last season, which speaks to them having the record that they did in winning their division. But the running game lacked explosiveness last season, and this is something that you saw them wanting to address by them drafting Jeremy Hill in the second round of this draft and looking to increase the workload for Giovanni Bernard. And so these are all things that the Cincinnati Bengals are looking to do to bolster this rushing attack. Look, you can't say that the Cincinnati Bengals lacked the effort. They wanted to run the football last year. They did run the football last year. But 3.8 yards per carry, not going to get it done. That was good for fifth worst in the league. And then you make matters worse. No runs over 40 yards a season ago. Zero explosive runs in the running game for the Cincinnati Bengals, which is very surprising when you've got a back like Giovanni Bernard in your backfield. You're thinking at least one of his runs is going to pop for over 40 yards, but that was not the case a season ago. He was electric at times, but never had a run that crossed over that 40-yard threshold. And Ben Jarvis Green-Ellis, while he's a solid back throughout his career, his time might be up in Cincinnati, and he's a 3 yards in a cloud of dust type of back anyhow. And so his inability to make big runs, to get every single yard that was there, kind of hindered this rushing attack a season ago. And I think if he does make this team, they're going to look to phase him out of the offensive rushing attack as much as possible, because they have younger backs that they feel can get the job done and bring some more life into this Cincinnati Bengals rushing attack. And so those are your weaknesses for the Cincinnati Bengals. We move on from these weaknesses to camp battles in Cincinnati. As you see behind me, I've got the assistance of my big board to break down these camp battles as well as the experiment for the Cincinnati Bengals. We're going to first look at these camp battles, and you start at the running back position. It's a situation where it's 6 for 4 with the Cincinnati Bengals football team, and I think they're going to keep 4 running backs on this roster with a fullback / H-back position as well. So really 5 backs total, but I wanted to separate those 2 categories because I think there are 2 different battles within those couple of positions there. So let's start with the running back position. And I told you Cincinnati ran the football a lot last year. Wasn't as effective as they would have liked to have run it, but they ran it nonetheless. So they need a healthy stable of backs to make sure that they can run the football. And one thing that Hugh Jackson does, and this goes back to his Oakland Raiders days, Hugh Jackson wants to run the football. When he was in Oakland, he led the Raiders to the best rushing attack in the National Football League. He used to bloody teams and bludgeon them to death with the running game. So don't think for one second that this Cincinnati Bengals team is not going to run the football. So Giovanni Bernard, Jeremy Hill, Cedric Pierman, Ben Jarvis Green-Ellis, Rex Burkhead, and James Wilder Jr. are your backs in this discussion. Of course, Giovanni Bernard going to be your leading tailback. He's the guy that's going to get the bulk of the carries this year. Jeremy Hill is a rookie that you drafted out of LSU. He's definitely on this roster. Cedric Pierman isn't a guy that you'll see touch the football on the offensive side of football that often, but he is a core special teamer, one of the best you have on this football team. I think his special teams prowess alone is going to be good enough to land him on this roster. I'd like to think that he is going to be on this football team. So that's 3 backs right there. So now you come into a situation where you're looking at 3 backs for 1 roster spot. Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, Rex Burkhead, and James Wilder Jr. Now, to me, I think Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis is going to find a way to make this roster via injury. I thought that Rex Burkhead was an interesting running back. If he could have stayed healthy, I thought he had a legitimate shot at making this roster. He's gotten hurt. Don't think he's going to be able to help this team this year. And so I think James Wilder Jr. is an interesting prospect out of Florida State. Big, tall kid around 6'3", 215 pounds, can run the football. But I don't know if he'll be able to do enough to overtake Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis. He knows the offense. He's comfortable in his system. They trust him. I don't know if James Wilder Jr., if the upside is enough to make the Cincinnati Bengals want to give him an opportunity over a veteran like Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis. We will see. Because if Cincinnati feels like James Wilder Jr. is someone that can help them right away, can pick up the offense, maybe catch the football out of the backfield, make some things happen, if he can pick up pass protection and do all of the things that Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis can do, then maybe he can last on this football team. Again, I talked about pass protection being paramount for this team. Giovanni Bernard, one of the best running backs in the league at picking up pass protection. If James Wilder Jr. can come in and do some of those things, because Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis can pick up the blitz, will pick up the blitz. If he can come in and figure out a way to do that and impress on special teams, maybe he can carve out a niche for himself on this roster. I just don't see it happening. I think Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis will find a way to survive for one more year in Cincinnati as a tailback on this football team. You move on to the fullback position, and this is another position that I think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to look closely at. I think they're only keeping one fullback / H-back. They really use the fullback / H-back in a situation where they could be lined up tight to the line. They could be lined up in the backfield as an H-back, as a fullback. They're going to be all over the place. They're going to throw the football to that guy as well. He's going to be a lead blocker. So they're going to use this H-back in a multitude of ways. Ryan Hewitt, Nikita Whitlock, and Orson Charles are your 3 options here. And to me, I think it's Ryan Hewitt's job to lose. He's a kid, undrafted rookie free agent that they have getting a lot of snaps. He actually started in game number 3 against Arizona. So I think that if he continues to impress, is able to stay healthy for the remainder of camp, I don't see how he is not on this roster as the H-back. And I think Nikita Whitlock, a guy that they like as well out of Wake Forest, an undrafted rookie free agent, I don't see him making this roster. I just think that Ryan Hewitt has done so much and they like him so much in that capacity that he's going to end up winning out over Whitlock and Orson Charles, a guy that made it as an H-back last season. They tried to see if they could maximize his ability as an H-back last year, but Orson Charles never flourished in that position the way that they wanted him to. And so I think they'll turn to Ryan Hewitt to man up that position this year as this team's fullback / H-back this season. You go to tight end, and that position is basically sewn up. With Tyler Eifert and Jermaine Gresham, you've got 2 pass-catching tight ends that can also block a little bit, but Cincinnati has always relied on a blocking tight end. Alex Smith has been that guy for the last couple of years, and I see him remaining as the 3rd tight end on his team and a guy that is the primary blocker. However, Kevin Brock has threw his name into the hat, is trying to beat out Alex Smith. Alex Smith is also a core special teamer. I just don't see Alex Smith losing his position on this team as the primary blocking tight end and a special team standout. Kevin Brock would have to do a lot to beat out Alex Smith, and I just don't see him doing that. I think Alex Smith will be the 3rd and final tight end on this roster when it's all said and done. You go on the wide receiver. It's a 9-for-6 situation in Cincinnati. This is a huge position for the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, you know they like to spread teams out, throw the football with Andy Dalton. And so this is one of those positions where they have to make sure they get the right players on the team, because after the first three receivers on this list, I think things get a little dicey for this Cincinnati Bengals football team, and some decisions have to be made. A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu, Brandon Tate, Dane Sansenbacher, James Wright, Jasper Collins, Colin Lockett, and Kobe Hamilton. Now, I already talked about the first three being locks to make this roster. A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, and Mohamed Sanu. Jones is out with a foot injury. He broke his foot, going to be out for at least a month. So we'll keep an eye on him. He'll be back. They expect him to be fully healthy early on in the season. So it's not a situation where he's going to be on the PUP list, or they're going to maybe think about putting him on the IR and he'll miss the season or anything like that. So Marvin Jones, A.J. Green, and Mohamed Sanu are all locks to make this roster. Now it's a situation where you need to pick three receivers out of the rest of this bunch. I think Brandon Tate is safe, as you've seen him take the bulk of the special teams duties in terms of punt returns and kickoff returns. And so I think via those two positions that he holds on this team, as well as a guy that they have been impressed with in camp catching the football, I think it's pretty safe to say that the North Carolina product, Brandon Tate, will make this roster. Dane Sansenbacher is a guy that just continues to hang around on this team, and I think he is going to be around when it's all said and done. Now, he could miss out on this football team. It's very, very possible, because the Cincinnati Bengals drafted James Wright, a special team standout from LSU. He's not a guy necessarily that will get a lot of targets in the football game. He can't catch the football, but his primary job on this team will be special teams if he were to make this football team. And again, they drafted him, so obviously they saw something that they liked in James Wright. So he's got a great shot at making this roster. Again, if he does not make it and they really like him, he can be stashed away on the practice squad. And then you have a couple of other guys, Jasper Collins, Colin Lockett, and Kobe Hamilton. Of that group, Kobe Hamilton is the most notable. He's a guy that this team drafted out of Arkansas, and he's got some size on him, 6'2", just about 200 pounds. So he's also someone that this team identified as someone that they wanted to work with. Can he do enough to stick on this roster or not remains to be seen. So I think it's going to come down to a situation where you've got the first three guys on this list making the team, and then you've got to decide between Tate, Sansenbacher, Wright, and Hamilton. Essentially 4 receivers for 3 roster spots. If I had to make a decision, I would say that it would be Tate, Sansenbacher, and probably Hamilton, although I wouldn't count James Wright out either. I think those would be your 3 receivers, in addition to A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, and Mohamed Sanu. Be fascinating to see which receivers they end up going with and for what reasons to help bolster this wide receiving group. You go on to the linebacker position, and this is a position that I think is being strengthened just by having some guys be healthy this year. Vontaze Burfict, Vincent Ray, Ray Malaluga, Marquise Flowers, Jason DeManch, Emmanuel Lemire, Sean Porter, and J.K. Schaefer are the guys vying for roster spots. Again, Cincinnati looking to keep about 6 of these players. Vontaze Burfict has morphed into one of the league's best at the linebacker position, led the league with tackles a season ago, and he thought he had a new contract ironed out with Cincinnati. Hasn't put pen to paper yet. I don't know what the situation and the hang-up is there, but he's not going anywhere. He's going to be a Cincinnati Bengal. Vincent Ray, I thought, has been a quality backup on this football team for a few years now, so he's a staple of what you do defensively. He's not going anywhere. Ray Malaluga, you re-signed him last year. He's another guy that is a starter, a guy that you count on week in, week out to get it done. He's actually gotten a little bit better in pass coverage. That was something that he struggled with early on in his career. Saw him running around making some plays in that Arizona Cardinals game on Sunday Night Football in Week 3. So he's definitely on his roster. Marquise Flowers is a kid that you drafted in the 2014 draft. Think that he's got a legitimate shot at winding up on his roster. I expect him to make this football team, so you can go ahead and throw him in the mix. And Emmanuel Lemire is a kid that you really like out of TCU. Last year missed the entire season with an injury. He's back, and he is a starter for you, so he is definitely going to be on this roster, and I think he's going to upgrade that linebacker position. So you look at the names that I just ran off, that's 5 players, and I said they're probably going to keep 6. So now it's a situation where you're looking at Jason DeManch, Sean Porter, and J.K. Schaefer to round out this group. And to me, Sean Porter, linebacker out of Texas A&M, has a shot. J.K. Schaefer was a kid that's a homegrown product, went to the University of Cincinnati, had a legitimate shot at making this roster, and then he suffered a couple of concussions, and I think that's going to derail his opportunity to land on this roster. I think when it's all said and done, Jason DeManch, a kid that made this roster last year, is going to end up making this roster once again to round out this linebacking core. So this is going to be a group that is going to help this team tremendously. If they're going to be successful, these linebackers are going to have to play well, and so I expect them to have a big season and big impact on this team. I think the linebacker group is going to be really solid in Cincinnati. You go on to the safety position, and it's a situation where it's 5 players vying for 4 roster spots. Maybe they keep 5. Maybe they keep 4. Right now, I think they're going to keep 4 of these guys. Reggie Nelson, George Iloka, Danielle Manning, Sean Williams, and Taylor Mays. Reggie Nelson and George Iloka are your starters. They're on this roster. Danielle Manning is a safety that comes with a lot of experience. He's been in this league, can also play a cornerback role, can drop over the slot if need be, has a lot of speed, is very adept at blitzing as well, gives you depth on special teams. He's a veteran that I think this staff probably trusts and feels really good about him being on the field if need be. Sean Williams is a young kid that you drafted a few seasons ago, plays special teams well. I don't think he's going anywhere. Here's the guy that could be on the outside looking in, and that's Taylor Mays. And he's always been someone that you look at and you say, boy, this kid has a lot of talent. Boy, this kid is big. He's fast. He's physical. He has all of the God-given abilities that's necessary to flourish at the safety position. But for some reason or another, he just doesn't seem to get the most out of his potential. He doesn't seem to have that potential switch over to ability and something tangible that you can feel good about in this league. And so Taylor Mays, even though he's played well in camp, showed well, he could be the odd man out in this group. Now, again, nothing is etched in stone here. They could say, hey, Taylor Mays has been with us. We want to continue to watch this kid grow. His physical skills and attributes are something that we love on this football team. And we think that he's getting better, and they might want to continue to work with him. Who's to say? Or they could say, hey, we've had him long enough. We know who this kid is. He's not getting any better than he already is. We're tired of investing time into trying to make him into the football player that we want him to be. And this could be it for him in Cincinnati. We'll see. Right now, the situation is very fluid. They could keep 4, they could keep 5, all 5 of these guys. You know, it all depends on how this roster shakes out at other positions. If they go lighter somewhere else and they have a roster spot freed up, maybe they decide to keep 5 players. Maybe one of these guys gets injured and so someone else has to make the roster. You don't know what's going to happen. But right now, if I had to put money on it, I would say that this team would go with 4 safeties versus 5, and that Taylor Mays could be the odd man out there in Cincinnati at the safety position. So those are all your camp battles. We go on from the camp battle to the experiment. And this is a really good experiment, and I titled it "The New Kids on the Block." The new kids on the block, and it's funny that I mentioned this Cincinnati Bengals team as the new kids on the block because they've been to the playoffs the last 3 years, but this is their first divisional title since 2009. This is not a team that is used to winning big in this division, and they still don't have anything to show for all the work that they've done. They don't have a postseason victory under Marvin Lewis, and so they're still the new kids on the block. They're still the youngest team in this division. I mean, you look at the Cleveland Browns, they're becoming a very young football team, but there's no winning with that attached yet. So they're still the new kids on the block. They still got a lot to learn, and they got to figure out how to get it done here shortly. And so we go to the research question. Despite winning the division for the first time since 2009, the Cincinnati Bengals are still being overlooked. With a few changes in Andy Dalton's newfound security, can the Bengals solidify their position atop the AFC North? Again, I think the teams in this division are getting better. The gap is starting to become a lot closer and being closed by the other teams in this division. You can only keep the Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers down for so long. They're starting to get younger. They're getting the memo. They realize that this Cincinnati Bengals team, they got younger, they got talented players, and they surpassed them in this division. And that's not something that those teams were used to. And so they looked up and they realized, we've got to get younger. We've got to get more talented players. We've got to get our situation up to par in the arms race that is the AFC North division. And so those teams have gotten better. Cincinnati, I feel like, has gotten better as well. But there are a few changes at the coordinator spots. Both of their coordinators from a season ago now have head coaching jobs. So it's going to be interesting to see how those coordinators acclimate to having that position now. And Hugh Jackson is no stranger to being an offensive coordinator in this league. He's been one before. He's even been a head coach at one point with the Raiders. So this isn't new territory for him. However, Paul Guenther is a guy that has not been a coordinator. He's been around football for a very long time. He has been with this Cincinnati Bengals team for a while now. He was promoted from within, much like Hugh Jackson, so he's comfortable. The players are comfortable with him. He knows what he has. I expect big things out of this Cincinnati Bengals football team. So you go on to the hypothesis. If Andy Dalton and the offense continues to ascend and the defense remains a focal point of the team, then the Cincinnati Bengals can once again win the AFC North. There's going to have to be a lot of things that this team does well to hold off the teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens in this division. And one of those things is that they're going to have to start going out on the road and winning. Right now, I don't see them having enough juice to go out to Pittsburgh, to go to Baltimore and get it done. And until they can do that consistently, until there is no longer that barrier, they can't even go to Cleveland and win, can the Cincinnati Bengals. Until they can do that consistently, beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, to get wins on the road against tough opponents in the division. Until they can do that, it's going to be hard for me to take this team seriously. And of course, the biggest obstacle in front of this team, winning in the postseason. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So let's go to the materials needed for this team to get back to the postseason, potentially win this division, and maybe do some damage in the postseason if they're able to get there. Red plus green equals cream. And Andy Dalton to AJ Green is vastly becoming one of the most deadly hookups and combinations in the entire National Football League. And if they're going to continue to be an explosive offense, it's going to be because of these two players that they drafted, 1 and 2, in the 2011 NFL Draft. AJ Green, it's AJ Green. He definitely is a top 3 wide receiver in this league. When you mention the best wide receivers in this league, you don't go far down the list before you get to one Adriel Jeremiah Green. And this kid is explosive. He makes acrobatic catches. He high points the football. He's one of the best in the business. And when Andy puts it up in the air, he normally goes and gets it. And Andy Dalton is easily one of the best deep ball throwers in this entire league. And when he hooks up with AJ Green, they make beautiful music together. And so red plus green equals money. It equals cream in this case. And if they can continue to grow together and become a Marvin Harrison, Peyton Manning type duo, a Jerry Rice, Steve Young type duo, if they can continue to mature and grow together as their careers continue to blossom, if they can continue to make each other better, red plus green will continue to equal cream. And it needs to in 2014. You move on to young and talented. To me, the Cincinnati Bengals do among the best jobs at drafting in the National Football League. There's not a lot of teams who maximize the amount of picks that they have year in, year out. They're not a team that has 13 or 14 picks in the draft and they just stockpile their team with a whole bunch of young football players and keep 7 of those guys and have 4 of them make the practice squad and 3 of them don't make the team. No, this is a team that if they have 9 picks, they pick 9 players that have a legitimate shot at making their roster. 7 of them are quality football players that you ask yourself, how did they manage to get their hands on all of those good football players? And every year, this team seems to bring in a surplus of young, talented football players. And it's a big part of why this team is so good right now and have been so good for the last 3 or 4 years strong, because they find a way to replenish their football team. This is no longer a team that has to rebuild. They reload because every year there is a constant influx of talent coming onto this roster. And so they've done a magnificent job of stockpiling talented players. And they're a young football team. And if they can just learn how to win, all these different experiences that they go through every single year, whether it be losing to the Texans 2 consecutive years on the road, finally winning the division, losing at home in the playoffs to the San Diego Chargers in the first round. All of these experiences, even though they're tough ones to swallow, are good experiences for this football team. They're gaining experience. They're learning what it means to win in this league. Now they need to see all of these talented players, whether young or starting to gain that experience in their 5th or 6th year. Now they need all of it to come together. Now they need these guys to turn the corner. This is a very young and talented football team. And if they can continue to mature and grow as a football team, they're going to be one of the better football teams, especially if Andy Dalton continues to grow as a quarterback in this league. This team will be a dangerous force to be reckoned with over the next 3 or 4 seasons. You move on to another material needed, Jungle D. And this is a defense that has to be the catalyst for this team's success. As far as I'm concerned, Andy Dalton is going to be huge in whatever this team does. The prospects for this team definitely hinges upon Andy Dalton and his ability to not turn the football over, make smart decisions, and put this team in positions to win. That's without a doubt. However, this defense is huge in the grand scheme of things for this Cincinnati Bengals team. If they're going to win on a weekly basis, if they're going to beat teams like they did a season ago, like the New England Patriots at home, if they're going to beat teams like the Indianapolis Colts like they did at home, if they're going to be one of the better teams in this league like they were a season ago, then this defense is going to have to play as well as they did a season ago. And I would challenge them to be even better. And they've got to learn how to take this show on the road. At home, this Cincinnati Bengals team was one of the best teams in the league. But you've got to be able to play that same brand of football anywhere. You've got to be able to pack this defense up, take it on the road, travel with it, and open up the suitcase and unleash fury on some of these teams around the league. You weren't able to do that last year. You struggled out on the road. You struggled going to other teams' venues and getting W's. This defense needs to be dominant, home or away. They need to put pressure on quarterbacks, need to continue to generate turnovers, and they have to take care of the football themselves offensively. But this defense is going to be huge. If this team is going to take that next step, this defense is going to have to be the focal point of this football team. You look at B block, and this is a big one because this has to be the Bengals block. The AFC North is a rugged and tough division filled with tough football teams that are gritty, that understand what it takes to win. And not just win 10 games and make it into the postseason or just win the division. We're talking about teams that know how to win the whole thing. The Baltimore Ravens did it in 2012. The Pittsburgh Steelers have done it twice in the last decade. These teams know how to get it done. Cincinnati, however, does not. They've been to the postseason the last 3 years, nothing to show for it. 2 losses on the road at Houston and a loss last year at home after winning the division against San Diego. So they have got to prove that this is their block. And the experiment is entitled New Kids on the Block for a reason. Because don't think for 1 second that the Steelers and the Ravens don't want their block back. They want their territory back. They want to be able to say, this is my division, I run this show, and this is what they have to do to get back to where they want to be. And they've went out and made changes. Both of those teams have gotten younger. Both of those teams have went out and picked up free agents that they felt like could help them. Whether it's on the offensive or defensive sides of the football, they've made some changes onto their football teams, and they're better because of it. And the Steelers, in particular, have gotten younger, they've gotten more talented, and this team is on the rise. And I think that if you are the Cincinnati Bengals, you've got to prove that this is your block, that you're not going to take a step back so one of these teams or both of those teams can take a step up and emerge as the best team in this division. You've got to figure out how to keep those teams down in this division so that you can remain at the top. And it's going to be tough. Like I said, you're going to have to prove that you're not scared. You're not afraid of the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens. And it's going to take you not only winning in the jungle, which you've done over the last couple of years against those teams, but you're going to have to go out on the road and beat teams in your division. You struggle with Cleveland on the road, can't seem to beat them in Cleveland. You struggle with Pittsburgh. They stomp a mud hole in you just about every single time you come out to Pittsburgh, and you struggle with the Ravens in Baltimore. You're probably a little bit closer to beating them than you are Pittsburgh on the road. Something's got to change. You've got to be better within the division on the road. It's got to be the B block. Put up or shut up. And for me, I need you to get to the postseason first. You're not one of these teams that you can just go ahead and pencil in as a team that's going to make it to the postseason. You could easily miss the postseason this year. If the Steelers and the Ravens are as good as they think they are this year, you could easily miss the postseason. You're not an Indianapolis Colt nor a Denver Bronco team where you could just say, all right, this team's making the playoffs. You're not one of those teams yet. You haven't established yourself quite in that same discussion in a way that says, hey, we're in the show. Okay, the question now becomes, can we win in the playoffs? You're not quite there yet, but if you do make the playoffs, you got to win. And to me, this is a put up or shut up type of season for the Cincinnati Bengals because, I don't know if you're good enough to win this division or not. I'm not sure about that. I've got my doubts. I've got my questions. You've got 2 new coordinators. How does that affect this team? Are you able to pick up where the other coordinators left off? Are you a better team because of these coordinators? We'll see. You got Andy Dalton out there now. He's got the contract. He's settled in. He's the guy in Cincinnati. How does he perform this year? Does he take another huge step in a quantum leap in 2014 to become the quarterback that you need him to be if you're going to win consistently in this league? How does that secondary hold up? Are guys able to stay healthy? Does Leon Hall get hurt again this season? Does your first round draft pick, Darquez Dennard, step in? Marvin Lewis has said he's the best rookie cornerback he's ever seen in his life. That's high praises for a kid that you drafted out of Michigan State, can he come in and help bolster that group? In the secondary, there are a lot of questions. Do you have the answers? No more Michael Johnson on that defensive line. Not saying that he was a beast, because he only got you 3.5 sacks last year. Still, he was a presence on that defensive line. Can you replace him as a guy that could stop the run and get pressure on the quarterback? These are all questions that we have. Let's see how you answer them. How are you going to use the weapons that you have on the offense? I had a couple of guys out at the Cincinnati Bengals training camp, and they said that they were using Tyler Eifert a heck of a lot in the offense, and they're looking to get him off the ground this year. That's music to my ears. Now I need to see it. It's one thing to have somebody tell me that that's what they're seeing in practice. Practice is practice. Need to see it on the field. How is Giovanni Bernard going to respond to being the number one back in the backfield and having his workload increased? A lot of questions. Do you have the answers? It's put up or shut up time for the Cincinnati Bengals team. Can you hold off the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers, win this division, or just get into the postseason? Whether you win the division or not, you've got to be better on the road anyhow. You're not going to have the best record in the league. So if you're going to the Super Bowl, you're going to have to win on the road anyway. So can you get it done? Can you do enough to get to the postseason, and when you get there, win? It's put up or shut up for this Cincinnati Bengals team in 2014. You move on to the independent variable. It's Andy Dalton. We saw him have a meltdown in the playoffs last year against San Diego, cost his team the football game. You can blame Jay Gruden for some of the play calling. You can blame whomever you want. At the end of the day, Andy Dalton threw interceptions. You lost the football game versus the San Diego Chargers. If this team is going to excel and ascend to new heights, Andy Dalton has to play better. And this franchise has identified him as the leader of this team moving forward. They gave him the contract. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be around. And so he's got to be better. He's got to take that next step and catapult himself into the discussion as the best quarterback in this division that has the likes of Ben Roethlisberger and Joe Flacco in it, both Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. So if Andy Dalton is going to be in that discussion, he's got to play better. He's the independent variable because this team is going to be dependent on him. And you move on to the dependent variable, and it's the success of this team. And the success of this team hinges upon Andy Dalton. I've talked about the defense having to do their part, but Andy Dalton is going to take this team wherever they're going to go. This team's success will live or die on the right shoulder of the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton. You go on to the constant, and it's Marvin Lewis, the coach with 9 lives. Marvin Lewis could have been fired about 4 times over already as the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. His tenure has been long. He's been with this franchise for 12 years now, which seems amazing in itself for a team that hasn't won a postseason game since he's taken over. Has only been to the postseason, 5 times in his tenure as Cincinnati Bengals head coach. That's not a bad percentage, just a shade under 50% of the time they're in the postseason, but they haven't won anything. And so for him to have been their head coach for 12 years speaks volumes as to how well the Browns feel he's done with this franchise. And don't kid yourself. Before Marvin Lewis, the Cincinnati Bengals were one of the laughing stocks of this league. They were consistently at the bottom of their division. They did not win a lot. They were a team that you could point to and laugh at and say, hey, we don't want to end up like them. They had a playoff drought or a consecutive playoff streak where they hadn't been to the playoffs in franchise history in 2 consecutive years. And it was just a very ugly situation in Cincinnati. Marvin Lewis comes in, helps them clean up this franchise and rectify things, and he has them going in the right direction. But he's got to win. And at some point, this franchise and the Browns and their brass are going to be tired of losing and not winning in the postseason. And so even though he's a constant, Marvin Lewis needs to start winning in Cincinnati. But one thing's for sure, he consistently has been a rock for this franchise. And I don't know how he has remained the head coach of this franchise sometimes, but he's done it nonetheless. He is a constant for this football team. So you go to the conclusion for this Cincinnati Bengals team. What does this all mean for the Cincinnati Bengals? And to me, this is a football team that they're in a tough division. Make no mistake about it. And they've got some obstacles to overcome. And those main obstacles are the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. And despite winning this division last season, I still don't think they're the best team in this division. And last year I did. I was all in on the Cincinnati Bengals last year. I was all in. I was on the bandwagon. That's not the case this year. They're going to have to win me over. They're going to have to find a way to prove to me that they are legit, because I feel like they have the talent to be one of the better teams in that conference. Not just the division, but in the conference. But I've got questions about Andy Dalton still, even though he seems to be playing better football. I've got questions about Andy Dalton. I've got questions about this football team and their ability to get it done in that division. And maybe my feeling about this division and how it will turn out is more indicative of how I feel about the Pittsburgh Steelers and, to a certain degree, the Baltimore Ravens, more so than how I feel about the Cincinnati Bengals. In any event, I think they've got a tough schedule. I think that they're not the best team in this division anymore. I think that they're an 8-8 football team. I think they're 3-3 in their division. And I think that they're going to have some pitfalls this year, and they're going to be at a crossroads when this season is over. What do you do with Marvin Lewis? What's the direction of this team moving forward? I don't know. I can't answer all those questions, but I think they're going to miss the postseason. I think they're going to be 8-8 this year, and I think that they're going to take a step backwards, and they're going to have to reassess some things at season's end. I just don't see this team being ready to take that next step and win 12 games and be one of the best teams in that conference. That may happen in 2 or 3 years from now. I just don't know if that's going to happen this year. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think the teams in their division are much better. I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers in particular have the talent and are ready to strike in that division. I think Baltimore is going to be improved, and they're going to be looking to try to steal a playoff berth as well. So I think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to take a step back this year. Doesn't mean that this team can't compete and won't compete. They could prove me wrong. I could easily see this team winning 10 or 11 games. But again, I just see them being 8-8. And how they play in this division will tell the story. If they can go 5-1, 4-2 in this division, they could probably be a playoff team. If they want to go 3-3 like I have them, I think they're going to end up at 8-8 and missing the postseason. So that's the lab report for the Cincinnati Bengals. I thank you for joining me. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. I thank you for joining me. Come back and join me tomorrow when we take a trip out to the Midwest to visit the AFC South champion, Indianapolis Colts. See you then. Like the content? Want more? Sub up.